Let's go home. Let's sit him down.
Dude, I have a law enforcement ID.
You, sir, are a disrespect to our profession this evening. If you say it one more time, I'm going to hold you in custody and make you tell the judge in the morning that you have a law enforcement ID.
We begin with breaking news. The former LAPD officer who shot a man inside a Costco in Corona more than 2 years ago has been arrested and charged.
An Orlando police officer was arrested after being clocked driving nearly 40 miles an hour over the speed limit in a patrol SUV, even though he was not responding to an emergency. And then he wouldn't stop for a Seminole County Sheriff's deputy.
Officers of the law and local authorities are meant to be the backbone of the legal system because they work directly for the people. They're responsible to uphold the law and keep our communities safe. Unfortunately, in recent years, an unsettling trend has emerged, shedding light on off-duty law enforcement officers who find themselves on the wrong side of the law. These instances emphasize the importance of differentiating personal behavior from legal duties. The following examples will provide insight into this troubling phenomenon. Off-duty officers facing legal consequences challenge the very foundation of law enforcement's role in society. While these individuals in uniforms are meant to serve as role models for the community, who's to say they can't encounter legal issues? At the end of the day, everyone makes mistakes. However, how you handle those mistakes will reflect your character. If a civilian were to drive at a speed of 40 miles an hour in a neighborhood street that clearly indicates a limit of 25 miles, they would receive a ticket. The same principle applies to off-duty law enforcement officers. Authorities and governmental personnel are not immune to the judicial system, or they're not supposed to be. Unfortunately, some people believe their badge earns them special treatment. As a result, they exhibit a blatant disregard for the law and refuse to accept accountability for their unlawful actions. The following incidents illustrate the significance of holding off-duty officers accountable.
Deputies say this body-worn camera footage shows Orlando police officer Alexander Shoney arguing with a Seminole County Sheriff's deputy for pulling him over and then refusing to hand over his driver's license before driving away.
On June 6, 2023, Alexander Shoney, an officer from Orlando, Florida, was caught speeding at 80 miles per hour in a 45-mile-per-hour zone by a Seminole County deputy. According to the arrest report, Shoney didn't have his sirens or emergency lights activated, and he didn't even attempt to slow down when passing the deputy. The deputy had to drive at 90 miles per hour with his sirens on to catch up to Shoney, but the officer did not pull over or stop to acknowledge his fellow colleague.
Dashcam video shows the moment Shoney originally sped past the deputy along Florida Avenue. The deputy says he turned on his emergency lights and siren and had to drive over 90 miles an hour to catch Shoney, but he did not pull over immediately.
You gonna pull over?
Please say a command.
Pull over.
In the body cam footage, you can clearly see that the Seminole County deputy was trying to get Shoney to stop his car. He even rolled down his window at one point to ask him to pull over. However, the Orlando officer for some reason thought the law didn't apply to him. Perhaps Alexander Shoney thought one of his co-workers wanted to engage in a high-speed chase for fun. Whatever the reason was, he didn't consider it important enough to pull over or stop his car. It wasn't until the deputy angled his car in front of him, cutting him off the road, that Shoney decided to stop evading.
What? I am going into work, my man. Why are you trying to pull me over as I'm going into work?
Because you're going 80 and a 45.
I am going into work.
Okay, what are you going to work for?
What does it look like I am dressed for?
What
does it look like I am dressed for?
My name is Deputy Hilton and I see your driver's license.
No.
Shoney was confronted by the deputy for driving over the speed limit, but he refused to cooperate, stating that he had to get to work. The deputy proceeded to ask to see his driver's license, but Shoney ignored the request, returned to his car, and sped off once again. In this case, it was clear that Shoney thought he could use the cop card to get out of the speeding ticket. His blatant disregard for the speed limit due to his stature as an officer of the law was transparent. Fortunately, the deputy didn't allow Shoney to escape from the consequences.
The Orlando Police Department released a statement in response to the incident, saying in part, quote, Officer Shoney has been relieved of duty pending the Seminole County Sheriff's criminal investigation and OPD's internal affairs investigation.
On June 9th, Alexander Shoney was taken into custody on allegations of evading or attempting to elude law enforcement with activated lights and sirens, resisting an officer without employing violence, driving recklessly, and exceeding lawful speed limits. To add insult to injury, his bond was set at $9,000.
Guess who I just pulled over?
Who?
Yarborough.
Really?
Yeah, the chief deputy driving a Dodge Charger, a souped up Dodge Charger belongs to the sheriff's office. I just clocked this son at 96 in a 35.
On June 20th, 2023, a Georgia officer pulled over a Dodge Charger that was going 96 miles per hour in a 35-mile-per-hour zone. The officer proceeded to talk to the driver, whom he recognized as Michael Yarborough, the sheriff's chief deputy of Henry County. It was reported that the sheriff's chief deputy was on duty when the traffic accident occurred, but he didn't have the lights or sirens on. It was quite an embarrassing moment for the sheriff's chief deputy, but unlike other self-absorbed officers, Yarborough was cooperative and apologetic.
Sir, here's your ID back. This is your copy of the citation. If you would sign right here. It's got a court date, time it must appear. Please slow down and have a safe day.
Though Yarborough didn't act out of line, he was still suspended for 40 hours without pay due to the severity of the citation.
This is former LAPD officer Salvador Sanchez, moments after he wounded Russell and Paola French and killed their intellectually disabled adult son Kenneth in the Corona Costco's refrigerated section.
I thought I got I still feel pain on the side of my head.
On June 14th, 2019, a 911 call was made about gunshots heard in a Costco store in Corona. According to officers who responded to the scene, off-duty LAPD officer Salvador Sanchez was the only one armed at the store, and he had fired 10 times from his pistol.
Corona 911, what's the address of your emergency?
We heard gunshots. A family of 3 inside a busy Costco store in Corona. An off-duty LAPD officer, the one who pulled the trigger.
Kenneth French was hit in the shoulder and back, while his mother sustained a gunshot wound in her back, and Kenneth's dad was wounded in the abdomen, causing him to lose a kidney. Footage from the officer's body cam recorded Sanchez saying he thought Kenneth, the victim, was aiming at him with a firearm. Therefore, he responded by firing his weapon. However, investigators who arrived at the scene found that Kenneth was unarmed.
Police body camera video, Sanchez tells several officers he thought he'd been in the head, that he saw a flash, felt a blast, and was knocked to the ground.
And I see a blast, and I feel my head just get knocked down enough for me to fall.
Also, store surveillance footage shows that Sanchez had approached Kenneth with a weapon, and the victim can be seen backing away. It also revealed that moments before the incident happened, Sanchez and Kenneth were engaged in some sort of altercation.
He allegedly said a guy in a blue shirt had a gun, but no gun was ever found on French. And security video shows an altercation between Sanchez and French.
So the theory is that Sanchez and Kenneth were involved in some kind of dispute that led the former officer the young man, resulting in his death. However, Sanchez is now claiming he fell and hit his head. After thorough examinations, investigators concluded that the former officer sustained no injury from that day. But Salvador Sanchez's lawyer continues to insist that his client suffered from brain damage, which sounds like an attempt to cover up his murderous actions.
For anybody in the LAPD to say that the average LAPD officer wouldn't have reacted that way is simply being dishonest, because you don't know how somebody's going to react with a head injury. If you have a head injury, you have a head injury, and it impacts you negatively.
Salvador Sanchez has since been fired from the LAFD and must stand trial for manslaughter and 2 counts of assault with a firearm.
Developing right now, a Miami-Dade police officer finding himself on the other side of the law after getting arrested over the weekend.
Witnesses say the officer to kill someone during a wrestling tournament over the weekend.
Miami-Dade police officer Guillermo Cuba is charged with aggravated with a firearm on an official employee and bringing a firearm to school property.
On December 11, 2021, the off-duty officer Guillermo Cuba attended a wrestling match at North Miami High School. Something agitated him, leading him to storm onto the mat and push one of the participants. When school staff escorted him out, the officer reportedly yelled, "I will kill you," in front of many students. Subsequently, Cuba approached the victim again outside the gymnasium, grabbed his shirt, and once again kill him. Later, Cuba was arrested outside the school parking lot, and he was found to be carrying a firearm.
When I heard that, I was just shocked.
This student tells us he was outside in the field when he saw police arrived on scene.
All the coaches outside, and I seen like 4 or 5, maybe 5 patrols out here speaking to the coaches and stuff.
Guillermo Cuba has been relieved of his officer duties and charged with aggravated with a firearm on an official employee and bringing a firearm onto school property. It remains unclear why the officer resorted to making death at a school wrestling match.
Off-duty Chicago Police Sergeant Michael Viettiro was caught on camera pinning JN to the ground after he wrongly accused the boy of stealing his own son's bicycle. Viettiro faces 2 felony charges, one for official misconduct and a second for aggravated.
On June 1st, 2022, an event unfolded where an off-duty officer was seen pinning a 14-year-old boy to the ground with his knees and accusing him of stealing his son's bike. The incident unfolded very quickly. Apparently, JN the teen was hanging out with his friends in Park Ridge and he was holding his bike. However, there was another bike in his way, so he tried to move it out of the way. That's when Michael Viettiro approached the teen and pinned him to the sidewalk. JN's friend immediately tried to get Viettiro to release the teen, but he kept insisting that the boy was stealing his son's bike.
Get off, man. Get off. I'm taking my son's bike. Like that. Don't touch my bike. No, it's not. Can't be doing that. Hey, your hands off.
Of course, someone was present with a camera and recorded the entire situation. Surveillance footage from the nearby areas later revealed that JN wasn't the person who took Viettiro's bike, which means the teen was wrongfully accused by the sergeant. When the video of Viettiro kneeling made its way around social media, many people thought it was a case of racial profiling, including the teen's parents.
This was a situation where he faced something that was egregious and tragic, and he did happen to be the only brown boy there, and so that's an important factor with how we are processing this as a family.
We know that this man had zero reasonable articulable suspicion to detain our client at all for any reason.
Viettiro was relieved of his duties and charged with official misconduct and aggravated, but was acquitted by Judge Paul Pavlis of the Cook County Circuit Court. The judge in this case found that Viettiro acted within reason. Also, because too many witnesses in this case were affected by the influence of social media, he found Viettiro not guilty. Even if the judge is right, Viettiro still wrongly accused and hurt a 14-year-old. An apology might smooth over the situation. You'll catch more flies with honey than with vinegar. Many disagree with the ruling, including the family of the teen, who promised to continue seeking justice for their son.
Let's sit him down.
Dude, I have a law enforcement ID.
You, sir, are a disrespect to our profession this evening. If you say it one more time, I'm going to hold you in custody and make you tell the judge in the morning that you have a law enforcement ID.
On November 14th, 2020, Roseville officer Drew Scott Romo was arrested by Scottsdale authorities for disorderly conduct and suspicion of assault. Unlike other cases, this former officer displayed obnoxious behavior from beginning to end. On the night of the incident, Romo was removed from a local bar for being overly intoxicated. He became extremely aggressive and hostile towards the security. Romo then tried to enter a second bar, but was denied access due to his intoxication and disruptiveness. His behavior became so intolerant that officers were called to the scene. Scottsdale authorities encouraged Romo and his friends to leave the premise peacefully. Initially, the group cooperated, but later that night, another establishment reported that Romo was creating a commotion outside their place of business. It was reported that Romo tried to use his law enforcement status to gain entry into the establishment, but to no avail. The off-duty officer, who was drunk and upset that he was kicked out of the third bar that night, decided to start fighting everyone passing by or in line at the bar. Scottsdale officers arrived to see him assuming a fighting stance and yelling outside the bar.
You can either calm down and go home, or you're what am I doing wrong? You're too intoxicated. You're trying to pick fights with people. Every club has asked you to leave multiple times. Every club you've gone to.
On what? What am I doing?
I've removed you twice from 2 different clubs. Do you not understand that?
Authorities were fed up with his behavior, so they decided to arrest him. To make matters worse, Romo continued his disorderly behavior even as he was placed in jail, prolonging the booking process. The former officer wouldn't stop banging on his cell door and continuously calling 911 without an actual emergency.
At this current time, you are in a jail facility, and the correct term probably would be prisoner. We're trying to get you released. From what I understand, you're dialing 911. You're continuously banging on the jail cell doors. We tried our best to give you the professional courtesy.
I gave it to you.
No. We tried to give you.
I gave it to you.
Okay. You got to help us out too, being a police officer.
What do I need to do?
Not call 911.
Drew Romo was soon released from prison and was fired from the Roseville department 4 days after his arrest. He was also charged with and disorderly conduct. Romo pleaded guilty to disorderly conduct on March 23, 2021, and is charge was dropped. This case is a perfect example of how one's ignorant actions can ruin their career.
From Flagler County Commission Chairman Joe Mullins. This morning, a trooper stopped him on I-95 for speeding in a red Ferrari.
Flagler County Commission Chairman Joe Mullins was pulled over on June 19, 2022 for speeding on the interstate. It was reported that Mullins was driving 92 miles per hour in a 70-mile-per-hour zone. Usually, someone who's pulled over by authorities would either try to argue their way out of a ticket or apologize profusely, hoping the officer would let them off with a warning. But this man did neither.
Where's that subject? Got you at 92 miles an hour. That was almost bad, dude. Normally I give warnings, I give breaks, but it looks like you've been written a warning already, so I do issue the citation. With that being said, it's going to be payable within 30 days. I run the county, so I know how. You run the county? Yeah, I'm the chairman of the county. Okay, but I just have to explain your options. I don't want any miscommunication, so I just have to explain them, okay?
The state trooper tried to explain the citation process to the man, and he flashed his title like a peacock. His attitude throughout the entire video was nonchalant. It's like he had no regard for the law whatsoever. And you can see that the officer got a little hesitant after he learned the man was the chairman of the county, so maybe the authority card did work. What's more interesting was at the end of the clip, when the trooper turned around to walk back to his car, Mullins went right back to speeding, and the officer did nothing.
He didn't want any miscommunication. Mullins then takes off, and as you see, he kind of sped off there when he left, right? And so we asked the commissioner for an explanation of what he meant by his statement. We have not yet received a reply.
I mean, in this case, authority beats transparency. It was said that this isn't Joe Mullins' first time being pulled over for speeding, and he used the exact same tactic. Hey, if I run the country gets you out of a speeding ticket, then the president should get immunity for all crimes.
Take the keys out the car and get the out the car. If we try to stop you for blocks, wow, he's a cop from the 6-7. Oh my God.
On June 2, 2018, NYPD officer Tanvir Ahmed was arrested for crashing into someone's car, a witness, and attempting to flee the scene.
New video of an off-duty NYPD officer allegedly driving drunk. This was the scene Monday night as the officer appears to drive erratically on Ocean Parkway in Brooklyn. He hit another vehicle, briefly stopped, and then took off again. The driver is identified as 28-year-old officer Tanvir Ahmed.
What's interesting about this case is that Ahmed wasn't apprehended by the police, but by the people. They chased him down, cornered him, and made him get out of the car.
Other drivers followed until Ahmed eventually stopped.
Take the keys out the car and get the out the car.
Ahmed seems very disoriented and intoxicated at the time of the arrest, but he refused to take a breathalyzer test. In the end, Tanvir Ahmed was charged with assault, driving while intoxicated, leaving the scene of an accident, and refusal to take a breath test. This incident was unique because you have civilians chasing after a law enforcement officer instead of the other way around, which is probably not the strangest thing you see in New York, but it's still fascinating.
A few rogue cops, or are there systemic problems within the San Jose PD? Another cop arrested, this time for DUI.
The department says Viettiro, Surrey, was off-duty and allegedly driving under the influence late last night when he got into a collision at 4th and San Fernando in downtown San Jose near City Hall.
On June 31st, 2022, another SJPD officer by the name of Viettiro, Surrey was arrested for DUI and being involved in a collision, adding to the increasing number of SJPD officers who were involved in unlawful situations that year. The other driver who was involved in the collision was also booked for DUI as well.
The department says this officer was off duty and has 3 years on the force. He was arrested and booked into jail overnight. It's at least the 8th troubling incident involving SJPD officers this year.
The SJPD mentioned that Surrey's case had been sent to the Santa Clara County District Attorney's Office for potential criminal charges.
Just walk right here. Walk right here. Shut the up. Get right over here. I don't give a who you are. Get on your goddamn knees.
Yeah, I'm a cop. Why you acting like that? I'm a cop.
Then you'll listen to me when I tell you to get on your knees.
On June 12, 2022, it was around 4 a.m. when Monroe County officers found a car swerving recklessly through US 1 at 100 miles per hour. The car had a hard time maintaining one lane, so the officers who were involved in the pursuit assumed the driver was drunk. They engaged in a high-speed chase, and the driver wasn't planning on stopping.
Original speed was 107.
he got so far away from me after I turned on my lights that I couldn't get a speed. Once I got close enough, when he was still fleeing, it was 111. That was the top speed that I was able to record.
When the driver, Donovan William Rojas, finally pulls over a few miles later, he exited the vehicle and declared himself as a member of the Miami-Dade Police Department, and he stated that the Chrysler was his unmarked agency vehicle. According to the reports, officers on the scene could smell a strong odor coming from Rojas. He also had slurred speech, difficulty standing, and refused to perform the sobriety test.
With these rights in mind, do you wish to talk to me now?
No, sir.
Okay. I feel you're impaired.
Me?
Yeah. No. Okay. Are you willing to perform field sobriety exercise to dispel my suspicion that you're impaired to drive?
No, sir.
No. Okay.
Clearly, Rojas was way too intoxicated to understand what he was doing or what was happening, yet he still remembered to use the "I'm a cop" card. Unfortunately, his status didn't help him escape his legal charges. Donovan Rojas was relieved of his duties without pay and was charged with driving while intoxicated in addition to fleeing and eluding. Interim Director George A. Perez issued an official statement, highlighting the importance of law enforcement accountability. He said, "Any suspect that puts the community lives and officers' lives at risk is unacceptable. The MDPD will not tolerate this behavior, as it is not aligned with our commitment to the community and its sacred trust." Almost all of these cases had one thing in common, which is the of authority. Whether it was speeding, DUI, or public disturbance, it doesn't matter. All these people cared about was using their status and title to avoid the consequences. But that is not the worst. What's even more horrifying is their disregard for the law. It's terrible when these authoritative figures of law enforcement officers think they're untouchable, or that their badge or title equals immunity, which it doesn't. It should be the opposite, because as people who enforce the law, you should respect it. Officers of the law must remember that they work for the people and not the other way around. You will earn respect once you learn to give respect. Hopefully, the issue of rogue authorities will decline for the better. The connection between law enforcement and civilians will improve. Which incident out of the 10 was the most outrageous? Do you think these law enforcement issues can be resolved in the near future? Please share your thoughts in the comments. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications.